Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to episode 56 of Bodied, the Cloud9 Fancast. We actually don't have a lot of other esports news going on, so this may be a short episode. It may be a long episode, who knows? But most of the conversation is going to be about Cloud9 and their Worlds group stage. So buckle up for that, and we'll also probably rant about NA LCS's 2018 decision to move back to best of ones and probably cripple us as a region. So that'll be fun. So, oh yeah, who is with me today? Who am I joined by?
The doctor's back in faster than a speeding bullet. Dr.Manhatten's back after a small hiatus.
Frozencreek is here to talk about our new unofficial sponsor that is totally unofficial, Slurms McKenzie, the original party snail.
Praise be to Slurms. Well, he's a slug. He's not a snail. Snails have a shell. He doesn't have a shell.
Oh shit. Okay, slug.
You got your animal dichotomy all wrong,
Original
Frozen.
party slug. He's unofficial.
Trying to be professional here. All right. Anyway, let's get this train a rolling. So, Vainglory played over the weekend, and it was pretty exciting, a little bit scary at times. They beat Gangstars pretty handily, 2-0, but then again, we always beat them 2-0. I actually feel kind of sorry for Gangstars every time they have to play us, because we usually just stomp them. And I think that's even worse because I think I Love Joseph used to play for Gangstars, so it feels really bad. But then they moved on to the semis where they played Tribes Gaming, who I think maybe they beat TSM. TSM lost to somebody in the quarterfinals, but they lost 2-1. No, Cloud9 won 2-1. And in the finals match they played Rogue, and it was actually a really close match. Cloud9 won 2-1, but it looked really tough. They got behind in the final game, and I was really worried because for Vainglory, if you get behind, it's extremely tough to get back because what the enemy can do is they can just push the wave in the lane, so you can't really do much, and then they'll go into the jungle and take everything in the jungle. So you're just constantly being like shoved out of resources, and then everyone's trying to fight, so you just lose more and more and more until eventually you lose the game. But it's good to know that they were able to come back and beat Rogue because now they're undefeated for the first 2 weeks in this autumn split. So very good job for Cloud9 Vainglory. And CSGO is actually playing right now. I watched the first match of their ESL Pro League matches for them against SK Gaming, and they got destroyed. It was 16-2 for their first game. I honestly have no criticism or anything constructive to say because when you get just destroyed like that, there's nothing you can say. There's not, oh well, what do they need to do better? It's just anything is better at that point because once you get crushed, at that point the sky's the limit. But it's kind of unfortunate, but it's whatever. Anyone have any thoughts on the exciting whirlwind of news?
I actually watched mostly two of their games against Rogue. I want to say that they looked good based on my minimal knowledge of what was going on.
I mean, I have no idea what's going on in this game half the time, and it's still super exciting to watch, especially since Cloud9's like the best team in North America.
Yeah, for sure. And like, I thought I saw that they looked good throughout most of it. It seemed that they were able to control much of how the play worked around the first turret. And in those first two games, though, they didn't seem to control it quite as well in the second game that they ended up losing. But I think overall that they played pretty well and controlled the game quite well.
Yeah, I think
based on my minimal knowledge.
Yeah, based on your limited knowledge. I think for the Tribes game and I think more of the Rogues match, They couldn't get the big picks that they wanted. I think a lot of the, I guess, super meta champions right now were they got banned or whatever. So they had to go for some different stuff. I think the casters were even saying that Cloud9 was maybe looking like they were trying out some new stuff. So maybe that was why they looked a little shaky and not as good in the semifinals and finals match. But yeah, Cloud9 does a really good job. Just if you watch how we play, as how they like invade the jungle is like perfect, because they'll put the pressure on really early and they'll force the team to like come out of the lane to try to fight, and it's either one team gets first blood or nothing happens, and our laner, I forget which one's actually the laner, but our person in the lane is able to get a bunch more farm. So we get a good gold lead off of that, and if we lose a turret early or if we lose a kill early, it's fine because we're still farming while they're not. So they play around everything really well, and they're also really good just mechanically, and they can play around each other in a team fight. So I think just watching Vainglory, the Vainglory team, is just really interesting and fun to watch from that perspective. But no one wants to hear about Vainglory. No, like literally no one cares. I tried putting like match results on the C9 sub, and almost no one comments on it. I get some upvotes, but other than that, it's almost on no one's radar. But let's move on to the thing that is on people's radar, and that is Worlds. And in a few hours, the team will play in their Worlds group, and we must be psychic, because I believe it was me, Pi, and Trey all predicted we would get Group A, and lo and behold, Cloud9 gets Group A. I want to start with you, Dr.Manhatten. What was your initial reaction to knowing that Cloud9 got Group A?
Well, I was definitely in the minority on that one, just to say the least. That part of me thought like we could actually get Group C, because that was possible for us as well. Actually, I even did like an entire like prediction, like just thing about like how I was assuming we'd get Group C. I was getting Group A. It caught me off a bit by surprise, because I was just really sure that Fnatic would go in there. But what really just kind of reassured me a bit more as to like why I like this group a bit better. It goes back to my personal philosophy. I'd rather just a couple of clear opponents that we can beat, as opposed to like a power circle where like at any point you can get like just completely thrown off, i.e. a group like Group C or Group D. But my overall thoughts of getting into it, I was actually kind of psyched. I'm like, okay, this is definitely doable.
Yeah, same here. I think that with EDG's issues that they've had this split, and the fact that LMS just as a whole region is looking not great, I think Cloud9 definitely has a shot at getting second in their group. I don't think it's going to be easy. I think they're definitely going to be pushed to their limit in facing these opponents, which they should be, since it is Worlds and they're facing up against some of the best teams in their respective regions. But I think that, at least from my perspective, I felt a lot better, because it was like, okay, EDG looks beatable, AHQ looks beatable. If you look at Group C, they have Samsung, Royal Never Give Up, and Fenerbahce. I don't think C9 can beat Samsung. I'm not sure about Royal Never Give Up. I haven't watched a lot of China, so I'm not sure. And no, wait, no. We would have to face against G2, not Fenerbahce.
Yeah, it was G2.
Yeah, that's my bad. That's my bad. Yeah. I'm reading it off of what's in there now, and my brain exploded. But yeah, we'd have to play against G2, which we've beaten once before in Rift Rivals, but I'm not sure. Considering G2 had more time to just kind of practice and scrim everybody, I am kind of questioning if we could beat them in the group stage.
Yeah, and I'd rather it go down the point. I'd rather just like a concentrated group like this with EDG and AHQ, where like that's who we have to focus on, as opposed to just like if we were to be in Group C, like just hypothetically, I feel like Cloud9, in order to even have a shot at that, would like they'd have to be on their A game for like every single game, because not only do we have a good, not only Samsung, like you said, like I don't think they could beat Samsung, to be fairly honest, either. So that's probably like 2 losses right there, which hurts as it is in a best of 1 format, double round robin for groups. But then you also have 2 opponents who can equally match your skills. So power circles are just super scary groups to me, especially one as a strong power circle as this one. So it's like that we got Group A.
I highly disagree. I think that Group C would have been better for us. My main argument is that I think that we wouldn't have been the second strongest team in either group, in Group A or Group C. And I think that Group C would have offered us a better opportunity to advance, because I think that Samsung and RNG could have traded wins with each other. I think G2 could have picked a game or two off of either RNG or Samsung, and that I think our best hopes for that group could have been coming out of it 3-3, winning 3, losing 3. And that was about 50% for coming out of groups last year, give or take. And a lot of the second seeds that came out of the groups last year finished 3-3 and won the tiebreaker. And I think that would have been our best chance, was being in a highly competitive group. I think that going into Group A, that we have the second Korean team and the top Chinese team coming in our group is going to be difficult, because we have most likely and obviously a low seed in HQ, and I think that it's gonna have to come down to us beating SKT or beating the number 1 seed Chinese team in China, which is going to prove to be extremely difficult, I think, and I don't think it's going to be very good for us in a group format. I think maybe if we were to play a best of series with EDG, we'd have a chance, but I think that they're going to have enough crowd momentum in groups, and I think that they're a good enough team that it's going to be difficult. Because we're gonna have to end up beating them at least once, and hoping that HQ can drop a game against hopefully EDG. But either way, it's gonna be tough. I just think that Group C would have worked better for us, because it would have been harder for all of the teams, as opposed to just having a team that all of us can bully in Group A.
All right, I think that's fair. I think my counterpoint would probably be that, with the fact that you have SKT in your group, you basically just eliminate having to really worry about one team. Since you have, if you go to Group C, you have to worry about Samsung, Royal Never, and G2. With Group A, it's like, okay, that's SKT. We're probably never going to beat them. We may have a shot, but in all likelihood, they're going to beat us. So let's just focus on the teams we can beat, which is EDG and AHQ. And I think that being able to do that, it allows them to better prioritize how they're playing, and they're not caught up. They basically just have one less team they have to really prepare for.
Are we forgetting that EDG is the number 1 Chinese team? They made it out of groups last year. They won MSI the year before, and I believe they made it out of groups that year too in Worlds, and that they are coming in as the Chinese champions playing in China. It's not like they're just some like pushover. Like, I don't get why there's so many people just writing them off as being some kind of crap team when they're obviously not. You could argue for days about if they're like the top Chinese team right now, but I think that a lot of people would rate China perhaps as the second best region in the world, and if so, these are the Chinese champions playing in China, and I guess I just can't see where people are putting Cloud9, the team who lost to Dignitas in playoffs, above the Chinese champions.
To my counterpoint, I remember here's a few that I'll give you, but here's my first one. You mentioned how they made it out of groups last year, correct? But the thing is, they didn't even top their group. They actually had what was arguably the easiest group a first place Chinese seed could have, and they lost to INTZ and EDG, who, that you have a Brazilian wildcard, and you had H2K, who, as someone who watched a lot of H2K and still does, that they were playing absolutely out of their minds. But I mean, even at their best in EU 2016, I didn't see them taking game off of EDG. On top of not only that, in 2016, you got to remember, Clearlove actually won the Dade Award for the World Championship, which is not something you want to take home of all the awards of the World Championship. And if you bring back 2015, 2015 was a bit tougher for them considering they had the exact same group right now. They had, actually, in a sense, they had SKT in 2015 along with Bangkok Titans, who was like some random wild card who didn't even win a game. And go figure, they had H2K again, but this is a worse H2K. This was a different roster. So, fun fact, they actually had Lulex, so Lulex gets to face EDG again. So, the thing is about EDG, is you mentioned how it's China, but I mean China proved at this year's MSI that they're definitely still beatable. I mean they didn't have the most spectacular they didn't have the most spectacular performance at the group stage. I mean it was impressive considering I think they've got number 2 seed. But I mean you gotta understand that I consider them like Taiwan 2.0, where you have teams like Flash Wolves in Taiwan who are capable of beating SKT and the Coup Tigers back in 2015. But they can still lose to, TSM. They can still lose to, CLG and Pain Gaming. It's just... I'm not I don't think anybody's writing off EDG by any means. I think that the fact that I think ESPN did an article of people predicting their groups, it was pretty split in terms of Cloud9 or EDG. It was 7-9, in favor of EDG. So it's not the craziest thing to assume that Cloud9 could actually beat EDG. And if you look at their lanes individually, they're not that impressive outside of the bot lane. I mean, you have Mouse, who's easily the weakest link on that team. I think that Impact could match him. Beat him, it's a bit ambitious, but that's just because I'm a natural pessimist, but I think he could match that. I've talked to many people, all my friends who watch the LPL. Most of them actually agree that Clearlove is nothing compared to what he was. Again, he's a Dottie Award winner. And he said, I'm someone from saying, don't be surprised if Contracts could beat him. Scout, while he did make the top 20 list, is the most inconsistent player that there is. There's times where, he had really, really good Lucian games, but, he plays stuff like Talia and Orianna. It's just it goes from average to underwhelming. And their only advantage is probably with a support like Mako and iBoy, who's new to the world stage, playing in a meta right now that's super bot-centric, so... I think that you can also say the same thing for Sneaky as well, but I think that iBoy could absolutely be exposed, considering he's only a 17-year-old player at his first World Championship. Could say the same about Contracts too, and if you want to make that counterpoint, it's fair. But it's not an easy task by any means. Cloud9 is definitely have to put on their A game and their game face, but I don't think anybody's writing them off and say, EDG easy. No.
Also, fun fact, EDG has never played a North American team in a World's group stage until now. So I think there's also sort of a hidden unknown factor. EDG may not be super experienced with how North American teams play, and especially our play style as well. So maybe they can get sideswiped or blindsided by the fact that they weren't expecting us to play a certain way or do a particular comp or something like that. So I think we maybe have somewhat of an advantage. But I agree, I don't think anyone is really writing off EDG. I think everyone is just saying, well, China has been kind of inconsistent. It hasn't really displayed a lot of cohesion. Also, I want to point out, for the finals that EDG won, it was only because they reverse swept it, and it wasn't anything super deciding. RNG, I watched the highlight video earlier that LOL Esports put out, and it looked like up until game 3 RNG pretty much had it, but they just couldn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, and some people even, I think people still, there's people that still debate that RNG on some level was still the better team. I mean, those are people who are like me and don't believe in winning equaling you're better, but there's people still debating that in China. Go ahead, Frozen.
So if we can, I think we can all agree that a best of 5 is a better measure of competitive integrity than a best of 3. so it shouldn't matter how you end up winning a best of 5 as long as you end up winning it. And either way, coming out as the first or second best team in China, I think it's arguable that China is the second best region in the world. But I think the first Chinese team is probably coming up behind the Korean teams as probably the fourth best team at Worlds most years. And I think the fact that it's played in China is a bigger deal overall. And even though they reverse swept to 1 at the finals, like, it still proves that they are able to handle the big stage. And I think that there's still questions to answer from Cloud9. This is a team that lost to Dig in playoffs, and we saw what happened to Dignitas after they beat Cloud9. I don't think that the Cloud9 that we played, or the Dignitas that we played, is the same Dignitas that was actually the whole split team that we saw. But I think that there's still questions there, and even despite the fact that we completely obliterated 6 out of the 7 groups or teams in the playing stage, that it's just not the same as playing the top class teams like EDG and SKT. My next question on that would be, if Cloud9 wasn't playing in NA last year, do you think that they would have made it out of groups? Because we kind of won or made it out of groups by the skin of our teeth. If we weren't playing in NA, do you think that we would have been able to pull it out?
That's a really good question. I'm not sure. The only... It's so hard to say, I think, because if they were playing in, like, EU instead, I don't know. I think there's too many variables to really answer that question. At least that's how I see it. I mean, you could probably formulate and see, like, well, what would happen if Cloud9 was like an EU team or a Chinese team or whatever. I don't know. I think that might be too complex of a question.
Yeah, I think there's too many variables, and I mean, the only time I've ever seen like home field advantage ever like really affect them. I mean, alright, you could say like 0-1 season 4, but to be fair, the Koreans win it every year, so I don't think they really care about the crowd they're playing in. The only one that was ever kind of a quote-unquote advantage was probably season 5, where it was in Europe, where you had 2 European teams making it. I mean, we didn't see any. We only had Cloud9 making it out of the groups this year. I mean, if there was ever a NA favorite, I would say last year was probably TSM, and we saw that happen. Granted, tough group, so I'll be fair to them there. But I honestly think that the Chinese crowd, while they can get crazy, aren't gonna be like completely completely overwhelming, especially considering I think Cloud9 has played in equally large crowds, especially like in NA. So I don't know. I think home field advantage should be still okay.
I think that we can we agree that if each game were coin flip between, say, a Chinese team and a European team, if there was a 50% chance of winning, if you put the game in China or EU, it would tilt the matchup to at least be 55-45. Oh, would that be fair to say?
I think that's fair. I think that both teams still have, pretty much an equal chance at winning then, but I do think stuff like that, home field advantage, does give you like a tiny little bump. I don't think it's enough to really swing matches, but I think it can help in certain situations. So I can agree with that.
Yeah, like it's something, and I think that might end up being the difference between Cloud9 and EDG. So I guess let's put it all on the line at this point. What do you guys have for your pick'ems? We'll start with Group A because it's the most topical.
Let me do mine first. Do you want me to do just Group A, or can I go through all of them?
Start with Group A.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, we'll go group by group.
Alright.
We've already talked a bit about Group A, so we'll all go down the line, then we'll go to Group B and talk about it.
Okay. For Group A, I have SKT, Cloud9, EDG, and then AHQ. I think that's what a lot of people have, and I think that's a pretty fair estimate.
I have the exact same thing. So
Dr.
not much to talk about on
What?
that one. I have the exact same thing as well. I have SKT, Cloud9, Edward Gaming, and AHQ in that order for Group A.
I'm a little bit different here. My realistic pick'ems, without being a huge fanboy, is SKT, EDG, Cloud9, AHQ.
All right.
And I've laid out most of my reasons why. We can wrap around to it again if you guys want to talk about it more. But let's move on to Group B.
I'll start this one off. For this one, I have Longzhu. I think almost anybody would have Longzhu topping this group. To my knowledge, I don't think a Korean team's ended less than first, with the exception of season 4 back with Najin. I'm not sure, but most people would have the Koreans first. After that, I actually had Immortals, and actually I was debating between that because part of me had this gut feeling that Fnatic could make it out, but I just ultimately settled that Immortals would make it out of that group. Third place, I had Fnatic, and fourth place, I had Gigabyte Marines.
That's funny. I actually also have the same thing. I think Group B is especially difficult to call because Immortals and Fnatic are both two really good teams, and it's just hard to put one over the other. The game is very bot centric right now, so Fnatic has an edge with Reckless and Jesus, while Fnatic has also had trouble with consistency with caps, which I think is something Povelter can overtake him with. And both of the junglers are very good. I think the top laners for Fnatic and Immortals are both solid, so it becomes this sort of back and forth where you're just kind of pushing it a little bit both ways. So I put Immortals there just because I think when you have Xmithy, who really brought the team together for Immortals, as well as the fact that Cody Sen and Ole have become a very deadly combination, I think they can combine all of their skills to defeat Fnatic, and I think Gigabyte Marines might be a little bit over their head. We can maybe see them take off individual games, but I think Gigabyte just sometimes gets incredibly over-aggressive, and if they can't get it right, they just kind of fall to the wayside because they'll constantly be putting the pedal down, but when you get so behind, aggression doesn't matter at that point because you'll just be throwing people into a wall basically. So I think that's at least my reason for why Gigabyte is number 4.
Yeah, their macro tends to be super over aggressive, and honestly, that's kind of what cost them the series when they played in the play-ins against TSM at MSI. A lot of people said that game 4 was pretty much in their hands, but they kind of played themselves in that one. But yeah, I would say that in terms of the Fnatic versus Immortals matchup, I think that the only one that's heavily skewed in Immortals' favor is probably the top lane matchup. I think that Flame actually put on a pretty decent show against Haunter. I have no idea. I mean, Soaz is kind of solid, but honestly, I think Flame is much better. Jungle matchup, I would favor that to Xmithy's favor, but Xmithy's more than just a jungler. He's a primary engager and just a general guy who brought the team together. I'm curious to see that mid lane matchup and the bot lane matchup. I think they're about even, and with a bunch of variables, just completely go off the radar and can completely go a million ways. But that's the one I struggled with quite constantly as well.
Yeah, same here. Frozen, what do you have for your Group B PX? Give me your PX.
This is my second hot take. First is Longzhu, second Immortals. I'm gonna say third is Gigabyte Marines, and fourth is Fnatic.
Is there any
ton of reasons?
Okay, I was gonna ask if there's any specific reason why you have Gigabyte over Fnatic. That seems like a bold choice.
I think that EU is overrated for the most part, and I don't actually think Fnatic's all that good. If you want to talk about the Kings of Cheese, I think that Gigabyte can out-cheese Fnatic's overexposed playstyle, so that was pretty much my reason behind that. Longzhu is obvious. Immortals, I think is pretty explanatory. I think if the second worst NA team can put the pound on EU teams, then I think the second best NA team can expose Fnatic. So that's my reasoning behind that. That's more of like a, I guess, logic thing, but I do think that Mortals has been a really good team to split, and at times it's been enjoyable to watch them grow, though it has been at the expense of Cloud9, unfortunately.
All right. Well, Group B is definitely going to be B. Ha ha ha. I think that's definitely going to be a group to watch, just because it seems very close for that second spot. So I think definitely pay attention to that. What do you have for Group C? I have Samsung, RNG, G2, and Fenerbahce. I do think that Royal Never Give Up can put themselves above G2, considering G2 they've had a very interesting international history. You know, there's always, the G2 8 meme and G2 vacation meme. They did finish second at MSI, but I think Royal Never Give Up is just the stronger team. They have Uzi, who is an incredible player, at least individually. I'm not sure about RNG as a whole, more or less. But I think this is at least what I think will happen. Frozen, what do you have for Group C?
Group C, I threw in another hot take. I had Royal Never Give Up as the first team. I had Samsung as second, G2 as third, Fenerbahce as fourth. I think that this was probably the easiest group to pick. For me, I think Samsung is most likely the better team than Royal Never Give Up. Excuse me. I just think that Royal Never Give Up has a lot of strengths in the early game that Samsung could maybe get exposed by, because they play so slowly, and I mean slowly, like they're like one of like the slowest teams at Worlds right now. And I think that a team like a Royal Never Give Up, who never turns off the throttle, can expose them and get a big enough lead to best them in 2 best of 1s. So that was my reasoning behind that.
Not bad. Here's mine. I had Samsung Galaxy topping. Again, just because of past trends of the train teams always at the top. So for the number 2 one, I actually had G2 topping. With Royal Never Give Up at third and Fenerbahce at 7. So I'm pretty sure number 1 and 4 are self-explanatory. I don't think anybody. In terms of G2 topping, is simply this. Most people will say I've heard most people say oh well, TSM couldn't make it past that group, so what strength does G2 have? Okay, so in terms of individual matchups, G2 has it slightly easier, just ever so slightly easier than TSM, because we're not talking about Looper and Uzi Mata anymore. Now we're talking about Let Me, and I forget the support of that Uzi's playing with. I remember watching him on the plane ride to Boston, and I wasn't terribly impressed by him. I think Uzi's a great laner, and I think that him versus Sven is slightly in Uzi's court. I think that Sven is still very good. But in terms of the support, I was very impressed, but I don't think support's going to be terribly impactful, considering we're still in the world of Ardent Sensor or Bust. The mid lane matchups is going to be quite interesting, to say the least, considering I thought that Perks matched up against Xie at MSI very well, and Xie isn't a slouch himself, but now he has to go against the king of the Chinese mid lane right now, which is Zhao Hu, which is going to be good. Trick and MLXG is another interesting matchup. I think Trick is kind of a very volatile jungler, which I did see out of him back at Worlds 2016, where Svenskeren looked like he had his number for the most part. Even in the losses, it looked like Svenskeren looked like he knew exactly how to play against MLXG. So I think that matchups slightly favor Royal, but in terms of adapting and playing towards late game, I think that's where Royal kind of struggles a bit. That was really obvious when they lost to EDG, and I think that in Game 5 it was like, what, a 50-minute game? Or something like along the lines of like a really like just key decision moment. And I think that G2 excels at those very well. So it'll be very close. I don't think that G2 will 2-0 Royal, but or the other way around. I don't think that Royal will 2-0 G2. But I will give the edge in this one to G2 to make it out of the group stage.
Talking about G2 a little bit more, I'm not as sure, because I think when you look at G2's lineup, I think a lot of their people are somewhat hit and miss. I think Trick is a very hit and miss jungler. There are games where he looks really great, and then there are games where he's just making these really weird decisions, and you're like, Trick, what are you doing? I think Mithy, as a support, is also someone that needs to be looked at, because watching G2's games, there are some times where he just tilts off the face of the earth. Like, he gets killed a couple times, and then he just keeps dying because, you know, he can't bounce back in the game. He's just dying over and over again, and nothing seems to work. And I think that he can't hit the reset button as well as I think some other supports can. Herx is very good, and Sven is very good. I will agree. But I think that when you look at Trick and Mithy, and I think maybe to a lesser sense Expect, I think sometimes their guys are just a bit too hit and miss for my taste. But then again, I haven't watched that many Royal Never Give Up games, so they could be just as wishy-washy as G2. But that's it. At least from looking at G2 as a team itself and not comparing it to other teams, that's why I had reservations on getting them out.
My biggest thing against G2 is the fact that despite being the best EU team, that they got drawn into a tough group. And I think that they kind of play like a poor man's Samsung, like they're a slow team. And they don't play quite as slowly and objectively, and I can't quite think of the word, but despite being slow, they're not quite as punishing as strong as Samsung, and I think that that's something that RNG can capitalize on in a best of two, or in two best of ones. And I think if it were a best of three or a best of five, I would give G2 more of an edge. I don't know if I would have them winning, because this is taking place in China, but I think the fact that they're like a poor man's Samsung in a super tough group is kind of the reason that I cannot have them coming out of the group.
All right. Well, we will have to see what. Do you guys like these group puns? By the way, I'm not doing them on purpose, but I kind of am.
You're doing them on purpose.
I half doing them on purpose.
They're fine, dude.
I swear.
They add a bit of personality to it, at least in my opinion. So.
You better leave me. Okay, that one was on purpose. But speaking of group D, I think this one, I'm really interested to see what we have picked, because I have TSM actually being first, WE second, Misfits third, and Flash Wolves fourth. I think with all the talk of MLS being just super weak in general, and looking at the competition in this group, I think Flash Wolves are going to have the hardest time. Misfits has never impressed me, just in general. Watching EU, their lineup and how they play have just never wowed me and made me be like, oh wow, they're a team I want to cheer for. They've just never impressed me. I think they have good individual players and they have good individual moments, but I think that just as a team, I feel like they are nothing special to me. So I think that it's going to be between TSM and WE to see who gets what. I think this could actually be TSM's time to shine, considering the group that they're in. And they actually, if you want to consider it a pressure game, I think there's actually a lot of pressure on them, because they need to shake off this meme that TSM is a just poor team internationally. You look at MSI, you look at Worlds last year, they need to get rid of this stigma that they are a poor international team. And I think that they're going to really come out swinging try to prove themselves, and that could either go really well for them or really badly for them, considering how they're feeling and how the matches go. And I think WE, I put them second because Frostgaran said that Team WE is actually probably China's best team going into the world stage, and they're much more consistent than the likes of EDG and Royal Never Give Up. So I think that they're definitely a sure bet for getting out of groups. I just have trouble picking where they would place, and I really just want to see an NA team get out of groups and be a first place spot. So that's why I put TSM at the top for Group D.
That's fair. For mine, just because, I mean, part of it is genuine criticism. Part of me, I think I'm just kind of trolling, and part of me might consider to like open my heart and change it. But here's what I have. For starters, I have World Elite, because on some level I think I do agree that World Elite is debatably the best Chinese team going into this thing. I would say the only one that actually, in my opinion, is debatable is actually Royal. But really, when I saw the play-ins, I said like mechanically they didn't impress me. However, their macro and the fact that they were able to play from behind, which is something that China's always struggled to do in past events, I think that was actually very impressive by World Elite. Yeah, it was like it was playing stage and it was Gambit and Lion Gaming, but Lion Gaming actually didn't give the worst showing. So there's that. Second, I actually put the Flash Wolves, just because I think that in the best of one, they're like I think best of ones really don't favor any of these teams, to be fairly honest. But after watching that they could draft, like their drafts weren't terrible against TSM, MSI. Not to mention, I feel like if they can really find that 1-2 punch, and if Sword Art can find a way to play some of these engaged supports in an Ardent Center bust meta, then that would be cool to see. But the chances aren't that. But I would say, a lot, the international stage sometimes gets to TSMs and nerfs to some degree, and I would like to see TSM make it out. I'm not gonna lie. I would love, not just for NA pride, but just for their own pride, because I remember reading an article on ESPN saying how, like, pretty much TSM's in the corner right now, and like everything that they had that would have been a valid argument at previous tournaments is now is done. Like Group of Death, well, now you have an easy group. We had a rookie support. Well, he's not a rookie anymore. Oh, some of the guys were new to their national stage. Well, not anymore. Oh, best of ones. Well, you saw that best of ones. You didn't do terribly at Rift Rivals. Granted, it was a porous thing, but you almost got out of groups. So I think right now, like, TSM is pretty much on the line right now, and pretty much everything they have to even give a reason as to why they didn't make the group stage is done. So I think that they're hungry and they could make it out of group stage. I think that very well any of these teams can make it out of the group stage, including the Misfits, which I'll talk about in a bit. The Misfits, honestly, they're that deceptive new kid on the block right now. Like, none of these players have ever been to an international tournament, which could benefit them and could actually hurt them at the same time. I mean, it's like the quote that Zed has when you select him: "The unseen blade is the deadliest." So, do I expect Misfits to top or make it out of the group? Probably not. I would have them with maybe 2-3 games at the most. But I see them playing spoiler to a lot of these teams right here, and it's a power circle where all 4 of these teams, if they want to make it out of the group realistically, should be on their A game. I don't think anybody's going to go perfect in this group, but I'll have World Elite first, Flash Wolf second, TSM third, and the Misfits fourth.
All right, Frozen, take us home on this wild ride.
I actually thought I would be the only one who would have that prediction. I have Team WE, Flash Wolves, TSM, Misfits. My main reasoning behind Flash Wolves over TSM is literally just fuck TSM. I'll be honest with that. This is something that I cannot cheer for TSM still. I still refuse to cheer for them, so I still refuse to cheer for TSM. I do like Immortals a little bit, so I will cheer for them, but I still will not cheer for TSM. While I don't think that Flash Wolves is insanely good, they're the best LMS region team. I guess I really don't have a ton of reasoning behind it at this point. It's just my take at picking a pick'ems group that is slightly inordinary. In that I do think that this is the easiest group to come out of. Just looking at all the other groups, because Team W and TSM are kind of the quote unquote elite teams, and I do think that this is a meta that serves TSM pretty well. But fuck it, I'm going Team WE, Flash Wolves, TSM, and then the Misfits. I do like Misfits. I just don't think that they are a formidable enough team to make it out of even the group of life.
Okay. Well, I actually almost forgot, but Trey, who is not here with us sadly, has wanted to pass on at least his predictions for Group A. So Trey has, and I'm sorry to everyone that I'm going back on this. I literally just remembered, but Trey has SKT going 5-1, C9 going 4-3, EDG going 3-4, and AHQ going 1-5. So, in terms of the majority, Trey pretty much has, Trey has pretty much the same group standings as most of us. But the groups will definitely be exciting. Does anyone have any final thoughts on the group stage before we go on to our next topic, which is the 2018 season? Okay, great. So, Riot announced that the 2018 spring season for the NA LCS is going to be reverting back to a best of one. I can see why they want to do it. Dual stream hurts exposure for some teams. Best of 3 takes a while to do, and people can easily lose interest or don't have the time to watch a full series. Outside of maybe people who are dedicated or don't have as much time on their hands. And, from a business standpoint, you want to have all of your, you want to have all the teams getting exposure in the first place. But I think for us, and I think a lot of, hardcore Pro League of Legends fans, we want to see competitiveness. We want to see what League is all about, and I think that is playing a series and adapting your picks and your strategies within that series. And I think best of ones takes away a lot of that, and I also think it diminishes the strength of teams, not only domestically, but in the international stage. But I want to hear everyone else's thoughts on this, because it is kind of a hot button issue, and people are somewhat split on. Some are saying that best of ones is fine, and as a casual viewer they enjoy it, while others are saying it's incredibly stupid and it's taking away a lot of the competitiveness away from the region.
I'll start.
I'm gonna start on this one, cause I feel like I haven't had too many chances to start yet. So sorry, I'm jumping in. For me, the first day or so after hearing that they were gonna switch to best of one, I hated the hell out of it. And I do think that there are some certain things that we need to worry about with best of ones. The biggest thing is the fact that you could play so fewer games in best of one format. Or what is it? It's like you could play more games in one split in a best of 3 than in 2 splits of a best of 1.
Yeah.
And I do think that, yeah.
Yeah,
and I think
that's what
that
happens
is something
in
to
the
be
gauntlet
worried about.
that 1 year.
Yeah, that's something to be worried about for sure. But looking back into it, retrospectively myself, I did watch more League of Legends when it was a best of one format. In NA at least, just because it was on the weekend and it wasn't an opportune time for me. So I would just end up watching Cloud9 versus whoever. Maybe I'd watch half the game before and half of the game after. but now I exclusively just watch Cloud9 games, and I don't get many chances to watch the other teams. So I do agree that the best of one format allows people who have time constraints to watch more games. But I do think that they need to do something to fix the fact that there aren't so many games being played, and some of the ways that they're doing it are not good. And I think that maybe we could split to a kind of thing where games are being played on Thursdays and Fridays also, and teams would actually play 4 times a week, as opposed to just on Saturday and Sunday, or Friday and Saturday, or Friday and Sunday kind of thing. And I do get why they might have switched. I just don't think that it's the best way to make NA competitive in the long run. I've always been against franchising, so that's a different discussion, but I do think that this hurts NA's chances in the future switching to franchising. But I do think that they do have to look into the fan experience and trying to make League of Legends a bigger thing in NA. And I think that this, while the head of esports development, or whoever it was on the dive set, it wasn't a hard choice. I do think that there were hard things or decisions to be made when making this decision, and I think that they are going to find a way to balance the amount of games that doesn't involve All-Stars.
Yeah, in terms of the best of ones, I will say that I'm reluctant on them for the most part, because I do agree that we should be enforcing as much competitiveness as possible, and if you're not trying to make the most competitive region, then what the hell is the point of competing? But I understand that Riot's trying to go to something a bit more familiar in terms of best of ones, something a bit more neater that's easy to schedule around. It's something that, again, just because I understand doesn't mean I'm okay with it. I still would rather prefer a best of 3. I think that it shows, skill. It shows we saw such a big jump out of some of these teams in NA. I mean, here's actually something pretty crazy to realize. If let's say we did best of ones, if we did best of ones, like I obviously, for the record, I don't think Cloud9 gets too affected by it. I think that Cloud9, even in the best of one format, still did all right. But here's something to think about. TSM in this past spring, lost 10 out of 18 of their game ones, which, if that was a best of one format, meant that would have been at an 8-10 record, which meant they wouldn't have even made playoffs, because I think FlyQuest had 9-9 as their final record to make the playoffs, and they were the 6th seed. So it's kind of mind blowing to think that how much the format could affect. It could affect it literally that much. And TSM wound up winning the whole damn thing. But I do understand that they do want to maximize potential. I think that best of ones it's very polarizing to some degree, I think, for a more casual audience. And I think that almost everyone would agree that it's more polarizing, and I think that Riot going into a franchising system where, we want to appeal to potential ad, like anyone who wants to, buy in an ad slot, I think that they want to see and maximize their viewership, so going to a best of one would be good for that in that sense. And while I just hope to God, though, that Riot does have an open mind with changing best of one. I hope that this doesn't stay for a long time. I think that at most it should last a year, or maybe in terms of 2 splits. But I just hope that Riot goes in this with an open mind, and I understand, and I'm going with an open mind on this one as well. But I would much rather a best of 3 system.
Well, it's interesting you mention the fan engagement and entertainment. Because try this piece of news on for size. They also announced that the All-Star event would be changing its format as well. So, and they basically decided, let's make the competitive season centered on fan entertainment, and make the tournament that was designed for fan entertainment competitive. So they've gotten rid of all of the goofy ass game modes that I personally loved. They are changing how the teams are made and changing how voting and everything works, and they're trying to make All-Stars more competitive. Which doesn't make sense to me because they're trying to, I think, change, in my opinion, they had this great thing going. Regular season was very competitive. I think this summer season was actually the most competitive I've seen the NA LCS. You know, they had these really great competitive seasons lately. All-Stars is a blast. You have players like Faker and Bjergsen, and even some unknowns like Levi, for example. You know, everyone just coming together to have fun and have a goofy event where everyone can forget about winning. The fans cannot stress about, like, oh, I hope my team wins or I hope my player wins. You know, just have a good time and have a break from all the stress and the competition and just have a really great event. And now Riot is going, nope, it's going to be a big competition now. Hope you guys like best of threes and such. So I don't know what they're going with this. I don't know where even I'm going with this, but I feel that they've just really gotten their wires crossed in the decision-making process, and I'm not sure if they really know what fans want.
I think the biggest problem, though, with making All-Star competitive is it's, like, I mean, I do agree that, yeah, they should get a break. You know, this whole thing was supposed to be about, you know, memes and fun. I mean, you had, like, that tandem mode with Faker and Bjergsen, which I thought was, like, what they were memeing, they're, like, the amount of talent in that
That's what was so hilarious. It was great.
Yeah. Like that, you had the infamous Froggen versus Doublelift 1v1 with the Poro thing. That, like, you know, and all the amount of memes that just come out of this is amazing, and I like that, you know, the cast has fun, the players have fun. But I think the issue that someone mentioned it is by making it more it's nice to make it more competitive because I feel like you should have one or the other. I think you can't have both. Like, that's my philosophy, is you cannot have a fun event that's also a bit competitive. I think the closest thing we have to this is Rift Rivals, and I think that one's a bit more on the competitive side. But my biggest issue is there's no incentive to the players to make this competitive. I mean, what's stopping Faker from just saying, you know what, I'm gonna play Blitzcrank today? You know, like, I mean, if there was something on the line, like, I don't think they really give him any money or anything, but, like, you know, like, I don't think there's any incentive for the player. I mean, if I was like any of these guys, I would do that, like, to say, oh, fuck it, I'm playing top lane, fuck it, we're playing Alawi, or we're playing, I don't know, like, fucking Blitzcrank today. So that's another big problem with it, and again, it is alienating some of the fan base who said, you know what, I want to watch Faker just have a good time and just play with a smile on his face instead of the roboticness to it. So yeah, I do agree.
All right, Frozen, do you have any other discussion topics? We are running kind of long. Do you want to throw anything in real quick? You haven't gotten a chance to chime in on a lot of this jam.
Yeah, my biggest thing about it is that they're trying to make it competitive, but there's nothing to play for still. So, like, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. The best of one was pretty fun to watch. I don't know why they're completely eliminating it, and I just overall think it's dumb. Just for all of the reasons that you guys said. It's just the fact that they're trying to make it competitive, but there's nothing to gain out of being competitive in this event, and that it should be a chance for people to have fun. And I think that the NBA going to, correct me if I'm wrong, but I just believe that they said that people would draft or would vote for the potential teams for the NBA All-Star game, and then two captains would draft their teams. I think that the NBA is totally selling out and making it a totally fun event that people could enjoy watching. And I think that NA LCS could learn from that, just because it should be a fun event, and that there is a reason for them to compete with each other, and maybe it's to limit it to just NA. Like, there's just an NA All-Star game as opposed to a World's All-Star event.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're definitely losing sight of what they perceive as fun or a good idea. But we'll simply have to see. Does anyone have anything just else? I think we kind of breeze through some of these topics kind of fast, or maybe skip some stuff. So does anyone have any final thoughts on anything before we close out?
True. That's actually what we need at this point, I think, is more memes over competitive integrity and competition.
I'm all for more memes, so I approve.
But yeah, on a serious note, Jack, the owner of Cloud9, has been a huge proponent of anything that has to do with franchising. So he's been a huge fan of literally anything that the NA and esports organization pushes forward. So he's been a huge fan of Best of Ones, just because that's something that I guess if Riot thinks it's going to be good for franchising, then Jack just automatically backs it. And I do think that he does have a point behind that. I think that we should make a note of his stance on it, because I think on the podcast we've had there's been some of us who have been for and against franchising this whole time, and I have been one who's been against it. So I think we should point out that Jack has been completely for anything Riot has put forward for franchising, including these Best of Ones.
All right. Duly noted, Jack. If you're listening to this, which you probably aren't, but we're putting you on notice. We're gonna be watching you like a hawk. So look out.
Yep.
Or like, I mean, like, it's not even that. I just think that that's something that should be on record, because I've been someone who's been hugely against franchising from the first thought and the first times that it was brought up as a legitimate subject. So I don't think I'm the only one who is totally against franchising. I might be the one, or the only one, who's like completely against it. But I think it should just be pointed out for record's sake going forward, because everything that happens from 2 weeks ago is going to be to benefit this franchising movement going forward.
Okay. All right. Well, that's all. Very nicely said. All right. Final thing before I do the outro. Give me your predictions on whether Cloud9 will defeat SKT in their match, I guess tomorrow morning. It would be the most accurate touch. Frozen, go.
This podcast isn't going to be released till Friday morning. Do we play on Friday morning?
We play on Friday. Hold on, let me see. Let me see who they play.
I'm one step ahead of you. We play HQ at 7 a.m. So we should be doing our SKT predictions for 7:30. I guess it doesn't matter what time we play, because we're going to be late for it. I'm going to say we are going to beat the fuck out of SKT and AHQ.
All right, Dr.Manhatten, go.
Please, oh please, Jensen. This is your birthright. Clap faker for all of us.
The clapping to Electric Boogaloo. It's gonna happen in theaters now. Buy your tickets using Fandango. All right, so you know what? They're gonna beat SKT. They're gonna do it. It's gonna be great. But we've been on for too long, so we should probably say goodbye. So thank you for listening to the 56th episode of Bodied, the Cloud9 Fancast. Feel free to tweet questions and feedback to us at C9Bodied or email us at bodiedfancast@gmail.com. We'll answer questions on the next podcast, or we'll just tweet at you, whatever works and whatever happens first. Just make sure to try to get in touch with us, because we're usually pretty quick to being interactive. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.
Goodbye.
Bye, guys. Have a good Friday, I guess. It's going to be Friday once this comes out, so bye.